Suma Krishnan, you are the co-founder and president of Krystal Biotech. Thank you so much for sitting down with Forbes for the 50 over 50.
Thank you, Maggie, for having me here. So it's my pleasure.
You were 51 years old when you had the idea for a novel gene therapy, a topical gene therapy treatment to address a really terrible skin disease. Can you take us back to that moment? What was the light bulb idea for this therapy?
Absolutely. I'll go back to my journey. As you can see, my journey started 30-some years ago. I started as a lab scientist, working in the lab, making different products for different indications. And I realized that lab is exciting, but I wanted to see these products actually get into the clinical studies and become approved for different indications. So I moved from the lab into what is called as development, where we take the product that has a molecular hit to a particular indication, and we start experimenting in animals and humans, and then take it to a regulatory pathway. So I started my career in Pfizer and big pharma like Johnson & Johnson, where I initially learned how to take these products. Then I realized, like, working for a big pharma, it basically you're pigeonholed and your ability to really expand and do what you want to do, because I was a very curious person. I wanted to learn, and whatever I learned, I wanted to make sure that I could actually incorporate and see products, that I could be involved from all stages, from early stage to all the way to approval. Sometime during my tenure at Intrexon, I realized it came to me that, you know what, Suma, you've been working so hard developing drugs for someone else. Like you come up with great ideas, you invent it, but it does not belong to you. You make other people rich. It's not a financial, but also, you don't get it's not the credit either, but you're not really ownership of the product. You don't own the product because you're not, the investor or the main inventor, because when you're inventor of a company, the invention goes to the organization. So at that stage, I thought hard and I said, I can do this myself. I know it's a very risky thing, but I had made enough financial, gain from my past ventures, and I was ready to risk the little money and take the risk to start, a new biotech, taking my idea and building upon it. So once I realized that, I quit Intrexon. I had the concept and the idea to treat this rare disease using a vector, that can deliver the genes for a skin-specific disease. The first thing I did is hired a lawyer, file the IP, and then basically raised some friends and family money and started Krystal Biotech. So that was the beginning of Krystal Biotech.
That's such an interesting journey. So did Krystal come more from your desire to have ownership over a company and an idea? Or was it more because you had this idea for this topical gene therapy and then the company just kind of followed?
I think a little bit of both, because in the past I've seen the drugs that I've worked on so hard, and I realized that maybe I want to do something with my concept and idea and take it from ground zero all the way to approval. So a little bit of both. And obviously, I didn't have the financial resources or the contacts or the connections to take the bold step to start something, on my own. But I think with my past two experiences prior to Krystal, I had the opportunity to actually to get to know investors, private investors, public investors. And they knew my journey and story, and they believed in me. Mm-hmm. They knew what I could do, because I think there was more visibility into my potential and my capability of taking a product from, phase 1 to approval, because it's not an easy path.
It's not an easy path. We'll get into the FDA approval process a little later on.
Absolutely. So
one of the things I wanted to ask you about the early days of Krystal, you co-founded this company with your husband.
Correct.
And you largely avoided the world of venture capital. Can you talk about why you made that decision?
Absolutely. I think we have seen in the past that, or with other companies, if you get venture capital involved, they pretty much take over the company. They sit on your board, they directionally run your company, and that's exactly what I did not want, because I needed the freedom and the ability to, really dictate where the direction of this company was. And partly it was because, the disease that I pursued to work on, I was very compassionate about it because I did work on this disease before. I got to meet a lot of patients, patient advocacy group, and I actually connected with them. And I realized, how difficult this disease was. So I really wanted to make sure that I had the freedom to really take this disease to completely from early stage to approval and be involved in it. And if you venture capital it was involved, then they would drive this, the strategy of the company, or may decide to sell the company or force you in a direction where your heart is not, or your passion wants to lead you. So I was fortunate enough because Krish, we have very opposite skill sets. I'm more of the developing the drug and taking it. His ability is to take the company public, raise money, investor relationships, because he had taken 2 companies public prior to Krystal. So we were a good partnership. I know people talk about husbands and wives working together. And one of the biggest questions, how do you make this happen? And we are not the only first couple. If you see, Madrigal was a husband-wife couple. BioNTech was a husband-wife couple. So there's precedence of husband-wives to work together. And again, I think because we, again, had very, complementary skill sets, we thought this is perfect for us to, work together to help Krystal. And again, Krish he knew my passion and my compassion for these patients, and he really wanted to support me and be there to, see my dreams of getting this product to these patients succeed.
We've seen other companies on the 50 over 50 who have a spouse as a co-founder or even a child as a co-founder. So I don't see that as the risky part. I think what seems a little risky is when you think about how capital intensive biotech can be. Foregoing venture capital feels like a big risk. Did it feel like that to you?
Honestly, I didn't think much about it. So initially when we started the company, as I said, we self-invested. We had some friends and family invest with us. But we were very clear to them, this is the money that you're going to lose. Krish was very clear, 99.9% you're going to lose this money. So if you're willing to lose the money, feel free to invest in us. So there were a few of our friends and family who believed in us and said, it's okay, it's she's so passionate about this disease, we don't mind. So again, because I oversaw the programs, I was able to, with a very limited budget, we didn't make many mistakes because of my experience. I knew the path. The problem with biotechs is you have people maybe very talented or you have these brilliant scientists that come from academia, but they don't have development experience. So often, they may go down a path which can be more arduous or more, and they may do more animal studies than that's needed, and they can burn capital because of not really having the experience or understanding of drug development. And I think that's something which I was able to thwart, because I knew exactly what's needed enough to, get it through the regulators, to get into a phase 1 stage and beyond. So I think that saved us. So I was very quickly able to do enough studies with the finances, have a very strong scientist, but very focused, very dedicated, was willing to work hard. We had a very small team of 5 to 6 people. We were able to do all of the studies that were needed for a phase 1 IND, get it into the clinic. And I think once we got into clinic, we had some very strong investors who had made a lot of money on us from our past, companies, and they knew my potential, and they trusted in me. So one of our investors said, you know what, don't resave money. Why don't you advise us to go public right away? And they were willing to, support it.
Well, speaking of IPOs, you IPO'd so quickly. You went public in 2017, barely a year and a half after starting this company. What drove that decision?
Again, I think we had enough money, but we knew that was not enough to take the product into the clinic. We had a very strong investor who advised Krish to say, take this public and I'll support you. So we, obviously, Krish, this is his magic and his relationships. He, found a bank that was willing to work with us. And I remember back in 2017, we started making the rounds. So the bank took us to all of the different investors. Some of them, again, we knew, and we made our rounds to see if they would be willing to participate in the initial IPO. So we were very fortunate. We had a few of them that believed in us, and we didn't raise a lot of money. I believe it was like 30 to 40 million. I think we had no problem getting that money, and we went IPO'd at a valuation of 50 to 60 million at that time, and it gave us enough money to take us to the next step.
And what's the valuation today?
Today it's almost 4.4 billion.
4.4 billion.
Yeah.
What's been the biggest learning as you've gone from 50 million to 4.4 billion?
I think the biggest for me is I'm like a dog with a bone. I knew that I have this product and I need to take it to the finish line. So I think keeping focused, not getting distracted. Obviously, you can talk about once you have money, you can start building and, hiring more people and expanding upon it. But that was not my, that is not me. I felt very responsible for the investors that had invested in the money. So our philosophy was not just grow and expand and big offices and build. We still stayed in the same little, tiny little office space that we have. We still are there even today, in spite of being a $4.5 billion company. So we don't believe in all that. So we don't spend money on stuff that doesn't have value. So we focused on making sure, and a lot of the work was done in-house because, again, I had, because of my experience, I basically wrote the investigational documents, wrote protocols, trained my teams. I was not afraid of hiring young scientists with no experience, but mentoring them. Many of the guys who joined me early had never worked in a biotech industry, but they're very smart, very bright, willing to learn. So, and I was willing to teach them.
Let's talk about the product, but before we do, I only referred to the disease broadly as a terrible skin disease. Can you explain exactly what this disease is and what it means for patients who are experiencing it?
Absolutely. So this is called Epidermolysis bullosa. This disease is very rare genetic disease. We estimate around 2,000 to 4,000 patients in the US. Globally, you could have 30,000 patients. So this is a defect, basically where you have a defect in your COL7 gene. So you have like 22 different collagen in your body. So you have the genes are coded for producing all these different proteins that are different functions in your body. And if if it's any of those codings go wrong, then you may not produce a protein that's necessary for certain functions in your body. In this case, it's a COL7 gene that has the genetic mutation or a deletion. As a result, the protein collagen 7 is not produced. It's either produced or the form of the protein that is produced is dysfunctional, and it doesn't do what it's supposed to do. What does collagen 7 do? It does is basically your skin has two layers, epidermis and dermis. So epidermis is the top of the skin, and the dermis is your layer below the skin. So collagen 7 is secreted by your gene, and it basically forms these hair-like fibrils. So it's like a little hair-like thread that threads your top layer to the bottom layer. So it basically holds the two layers together. That's why your skin is intact. So when these patients don't have collagen 7, you can imagine that very needed, anchoring fibrils that COL7 produces doesn't exist. So the skin is sliding over each other. That means your dermis and epidermis. So even with a slight rub or slight disruption, the skin starts separating out, and they have this whole large open wounds on their skin.
So just brushing by another person
or
can create an open wound.
Just sitting. Yes, they can by sitting, friction.
And what does your invention do?
So what we do is, obviously, skin it's a very tricky organ. So it's not easy to find a solution that that you can for fixing this problem, because either they do skin grafts, and those don't work because the grafts can be tricky, and they need surgery and stuff like that, and still it's not a permanent solution because your skin turns over. That's what it does, like hair. The skin turns over, so these grafts may not even last. So we had to find so my goal was to find a easy solution that was painless and that can be easily applied on these open wounds, because they can't tolerate pain. I mean, these kids, I've heard patients tell me that. I had one patient tell me, Suma, pain is my friend. The day when pain stops is when I know I'm dead. So that's the life of these patients. So you cannot have a product that will induce more pain on them. So my thinking was, how can I come up with a solution never done before? It's a gene therapy that I can topically apply as a gel. So again, we used a virus called as herpes virus, where herpes is known for infecting skin. So it's a very perfect virus. But you can't take wild type herpes. So we engineered the virus to remove all the bad components of the virus so that it doesn't infect and cause the disease. And it gave us enough space to insert the human gene, the COL7 gene.
Wow.
So that's what we did. So this is what my scientists did. We built the virus, we engineered the virus, inserted the COL7 gene, and now we have a virus that we can actually manufacture. We can make large batches. We can expand this vector, and we can make large amounts. And then we formulate into a gel. So when there's an open wound, we apply it on the open wound, and then we bandage it. And as the wound closes, when the new skin forms, because the virus is on top of the wounds, it'll produce the collagen 7, and it corrects the skin.
And then it's not as fragile.
It's not as fragile. Exactly.
And this is the therapy that has FDA approval,
correct? In 2 years ago, 2023, May of 2023, we got approval from the FDA.
What was that process like? How difficult was it?
It was a pretty daunting process because, again, topical gene therapy was never done before. So we were trailblazers on that approach. So it was a lot of working with the agency. For them too, it was new. So figuring it out, the clinical pathway, the administration pathway, the type of clinical studies, the type of endpoints to show that the product is working was, again, novel. So we had to work very closely with the agency. And then right in the middle of our pivotal trial with COVID hitting us. So that was another, made it more challenging. But, I had a team that was focused, and even through COVID times, we continued our clinical trials. We were fortunate that we were able to, all the patients on our trial, took extra precautions so they could be protected from COVID, so that they could continue the trial and not interfere with the study, and we could get the outcome. So it was pretty challenging times through COVID. And again, working with the regulators with a new approach of a topical, gene therapy. And the most important thing is, again, this is an administration that you weekly administer an open wound. So, it cannot be done in the clinic or at the hospital because these patients cannot travel every week. So it was important for me to think about what can I do to work with the agency to make sure such a therapy can be administered at home.
Suma, as you talk about going through the FDA approval process for your therapy and breaking new ground, I think about all the ways that entrepreneurs and inventors following in your footsteps can learn from that and create their own therapies. I have a similar question as it relates to the actual gene therapy that you have created. You mentioned that this disease affects 2,000 people. It's relatively rare. Are there scientific findings and answers within this therapy that could be applied to other diseases?
That's a very good question. Obviously, as we learned more about our vector and how we were able to help this disease, we realized this particular vector has could be used across multiple different diseases. So that's something we learned so much, right? It's not just the skin cells. But the vector can also, be useful for lung diseases, or for cancer, or for the eye, because again, so these are the things that we learned, as we move this program forward. So as we were, moving our skin program forward, our scientists started working and investigating for other indications. So yes, the simple answer is yes, because if you look at our pipeline, we have now several clinical trials for multiple different diseases and indications. So we figured that we can also use this vector that can be administered to the lung, or it can be administered to the eye. So basically, we can treat other rare diseases with the same concept of a gene that is a defect or a mutation and is not producing the protein. So we have a program in the lung for a rare disease called cystic fibrosis. So for cystic fibrosis, there are drugs that are available that are pretty effective. But if you look at cystic fibrosis, there's 4 different kinds of mutations. So for 2 different mutations, there are existing drugs that can work on these patients, but there are a particular mutation where these patients don't produce any protein. There's nothing for them. So there's a subset of cystic fibrosis patients. There's nothing today in the market. So again, we figured that with our vector, we can introduce this, cystic fibrosis gene and can help that subset of population.
Wow, that would be transformational.
Yes, we're very excited. We initiated our clinical trial, pretty novel. So instead of a gel now, we formulate it into a nebulized form, so we can use a simple nebulizer. Put this vector with the CFTR gene, and a patient can just nebulize it, and they can get the vector directly into their lungs, and then it can produce the protein right where it's supposed to be. So we are in the phase 1, phase 2. We've dosed a few patients, and we are investigating it for that indication. So that's an exciting
still
thing.
Early stages.
It's early stages, but we have now pretty good, strong safety data showing that this route can be safe, and we don't have to pay. Because again, when now it's in the lungs directly, so again, safety becomes a big part. So we have established safety, so now we have to move into the part of evaluating clinical efficacy. So that's where we are with cystic fibrosis. Yeah.
We have a few questions for you that we ask everyone on the 50 over 50, and I'll start with this one. Is being over the age of 50 an advantage or disadvantage in your line of work?
I think a little bit of both. Obviously, you age. Aging is never a fun process, but I don't think about it. I think when you have a passion and a desire, and you're so, you see patients suffering, it gives you a perspective in life. You feel you're so lucky, because I see, the average expectancy of the disease in this is 30 to 35, because even if they don't die of EB, they have they die of squamous cell carcinoma, because they get this fast-growing aggressive cancer because of skin turnover and constant wounding and closing. So I see my patients with squamous cell carcinoma, and I see how strong they fight. They don't give up. They get it on their feet or their hands, and once they get the indication and a positive biopsy, it's rapid spread. So I see them amputating their organs, like they start amputating their legs, sometimes their 2 hands, and they still want to survive, and they have the will to live. So they teach me a lesson every day, and it gives me life in perspective. So every day on this planet for me is a gift. So I look at it that way, and it's changed my life, and I feel they've made me a better person, and I feel taught me lessons, and every day is a gift.
Every day is a gift. When you were an early career scientist, when you were in your 20s and 30s, did you ever imagine your career after 50?
No, I would. If you ask me, I came here as an immigrant when I was 20 years old, to go to grad school, pretty poor with nothing, and building and again, I had no idea, because when you work for a big pharma, it's very male dominant, and you're a little scientist in the lab, and you have all these big ambitions. And if you look back, I would never have imagined that I would be sitting here and I would have a drug approved with my own company, with my own IP, building a concept. No, in a million years. But what I would say is, I'm a fighter, and if I have a will, I'll make it happen. So as I said, I'm a bulldog in a china shop. I have a goal and I'll just do it. I'm not afraid. So I think, whereas I think my husband is a little more cautious and I'm a little more like, I don't care. So I think we balance out pretty well. And I just go for it, and I don't think of the risks.
The way you talk reminds me of how some 30 under 30s talk about their risk taking. Sometimes it's better to just go for it rather than overthink. And when you get to the middle or later part of a career, it's easy to think about all the ways something can go wrong. But you ignore all the ways something can go wrong and just go for it.
Exactly. I do. Of course, financially, I'm not a person that needs a lot to survive, because I've come from nothing and I can survive. So I'm not afraid. I think if you're not afraid to, survive with the minimalistic, then that's me. So I'm not afraid of losing it all, but as long as I have enough to, have a roof over me and enough to survive, I'll be fine. So I think having that attitude helped me. So I was not afraid of losing it all, but giving it a shot. So,
what's your advice to women in their 20s and 30s who either can't imagine their career over the age of 50 or who feel like they have to accomplish everything, get all the FDA approvals before they turn 40?
That's a very good question, because there are a lot of young girls who come to me because they've seen what I've done, and I'm not the normal path. It's very unique. I'm not an MD. I'm not, somebody with as I said, the typical biopharmaceutical executives that you see, or inventors you see. So again, they look at me and they see they're pretty. Sometimes they say, "If you can do it, can I do it?" So, and I said, "Of course." But again, I don't think you cannot be ambitious right from the get-go. You cannot be 25-year-old and say, "I want to do this, I want to achieve this, I want to make this." It's a journey. I think my advice is learn. Be humble, learn as much as you can. And leave all your ego out of the window and be able to do the most tasks that you feel can be mundane, repetitive, boring. You have to do it because you have to be able to finish tasks. So that's my advice. Just, dig in, learn as much, because knowledge is your weapon. The more you know, the more the things that and choices or risks that you take becomes less riskier. Because if you feel like, oh, I spent maybe 2 months at it, trust me, it takes 2 years to sometimes to learn. It's like, it's 2 months may not be enough. And if you cannot always be honest to yourself. Like, do I really know this stuff? You have to be honest about what you know and what you don't know. And again, patience, endurance, hard work, and patience. Patience is very important.
Patience.
It took me 25 years to do what I wanted. So, and I attribute that to patience and working on several drugs before I could embark on my own. I didn't do it after my first one because I knew that I didn't know enough and my chances of failing are higher. Or the chances of saying that, hey, at this point I should give up and not proceed anymore. When to give up, because then you can go to complete failure.
So it really took those prior experiences to finally have ownership over your inventions.
For me. Some people may get luckier, but I had a little bit of, luck is an important factor, but it was not all luck. It was a combination of a lot, I would say. A lot of hard work, a lot of willingness to learn, perseverance, long hours, discipline.
Suma Krishnan, thank you so much for sitting down with Forbes for the 50 year.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.